Welcome to Midlife Murmurings, the gathering place for stories of renewal and courage. I'm your host, Chris Gates. In a murmuration, starlings find beauty and strength in flight together. In the same way, we too discover wisdom in community. Today, Philippa Clifford-Davies joins us to share how midlife can be a rebirth, balancing family and career, embracing authenticity, and finding joy in connection, whilst navigating life's curveballs. If you enjoy this conversation, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join our murmuration. Let's take flight with Philippa. So, hello, I am delighted to welcome to Midlife Murmurings, Philippa Clifford-Davies. Philippa, why don't you introduce yourself to our listeners?
So I'm Philippa Clifford-Davies. I am 48 years old, which I guess is midlife, although I'm not sure if it is midlife because that would assume that I'm going to live to a very old age if I'm at midlife. So I am American by birth, but I've lived in the UK since 1998. My accent has never shifted though. I am a long-term employee of a large technology company and mother of 2 children, owner of 1 dog and 1 husband. Not the owner of the husband, but, you know, cohabitant of the husband. Living in Devon.
Excellent. And I'm really pleased you agreed to do this because I think you've got some very interesting stories and perspectives from your career. And I know many people admire you for what you've done and how you've done it as well. And so hopefully we get to hear a bit about that. But let's start with our first question. Philippa, what does midlife mean to you?
Well, as I just mentioned, it definitely doesn't mean midlife through your years that you're going to be alive. I think like there's this negative connotation of midlife crisis, which means that, you know, you're throwing everything up in the air um and I don't think it's a crisis. I think it's like a rebirth. Like it's your opportunity to go, oh, I wanna start doing this a different way. I don't think it has to be a crisis. So for me, it's definitely not midlife. Um, I I think maybe in thirds, and I think it's for me, it's the time where you sit down and you think about what do you want your future to look like, and what are you going to put in place to do it. So am I at midlife? I guess I probably am.
Great. I want to start a little bit earlier than that first, and we'll come back to some of those midlife reflections. When you think back to your childhood and your parents, I'm curious about what your parents gave you that has shaped you into the person you are today.
That's easy. My parents gave me an education. That was their number 1 priority when I was a kid. We did not have the best sort of state education system. So my mom actually took a job at a private school in our hometown so that my brother would be able to go there free of charge. And because it was an all boys school, they gave sort of grants that if you had a daughter to go to an all girls school. I was lucky enough I got to choose what school I went to, and weirdly, because I really wasn't into going to an all girls school at all, I chose an all girls school. And I'm incredibly thankful to my parents because that education really set me on a path that not necessarily got me where I am today, but certainly pointed me in this direction.
Great. And how about the gifts that they gave you as well in terms of their character or personality or their DNA that have helped shape you as well?
My parents were the most amazing like hosts. If we had a party, everyone wanted to come. My dad was and still is an amazing storyteller, and he could just have everyone at the edge of their seats. And my mom was sort of the hostess with the mostest. Everyone felt comfortable. She made sure she thought about all of her guests as they came through the door. And I'd like to think I have a lot of both of them in me in that way. And I definitely hope so. It's some of the
Yes.
characteristics that I love most about my parents.
And do you see those characteristics appearing in the way that you shape and lead teams as well, in terms of storytelling and
Um,
hospitality?
yeah, I think so. I definitely bring fun to everything that I do, or at least I try.
Yeah.
I think if you can't laugh, what's the point? You can still be incredibly successful and get the job done and still have everyone smiling while you're doing it. And I think between the storytelling and making sure that when you're trying to get things across to someone that you're doing it in a way that they're gripped by it,
Mm.
and also making sure that they feel comfortable, that they feel that they are part of something bigger than just themselves. I think I definitely have brought that with me. Chris, I've never actually thought of it that way before. So that's lovely. I feel like I've brought a bit of my parents to me to work each day now.
They are strong within you, Philippa. That is definitely something that you've seen and enjoyed. And now you get to be a mum yourself, and obviously family is important to you, and you've made some lots of choices around family through your long career with that technology giant. How have you balanced some of that in real life? Yeah, working in a high pressure sales environment in a corporate structure with being a mum and a wife and yeah, a member of the community. What are some of the sort of decisions you've had to make along the way to make that trade off work?
I've made a lot of decisions along the way. I think some of them I made consciously and some of them unconsciously. And I look back and I wonder if I would do it the same way. So when I first became a mom, bearing in mind, I do live in Devon. It is not central to anything regarding work. And my family is back in America. So in terms of having a child and having any support, I didn't have any here. And so when I went back to work after having my daughter, I decided to go back part time and only do 4 days a week because I wanted balance. And what I found was that I was still doing a full 100% in terms of hours I was putting in. Yes, they weren't 9 to 5 hours that I was putting in, but I was
Mhm.
still completing the same amount of work. And and that just made me really resentful that that was the case because I was only getting paid 80%. Um, and it taught me a couple of things. One is negotiate better. Think about what you're capable of doing and whether there's a better um, balance that you can do with the company you work for. Are they okay with you doing the full hours of work but just not doing them 9 to 5? Can we do it that way? And the other was know what my value was. And I think I had to relearn that a few times over my career in terms of what my value is.
Mhm.
Um, but I remember that was a conscious decision that I had to learn from and go, okay, I'm not going to do that again when I have my second child. I'm going to go back full time and negotiate what that looks like. And along the way, I think any parent looks at their journey with their children and think there were parts of it that just went on forever, and some of those parts that went on forever were only a matter of weeks when they just weren't sleeping, or it went on for years as you sort of hit the teen years and things. And depending at the stages that their kids were at, I need to also look at the stages that I was in with my career and decision making, and how you keep your priorities straight. There's been some roles that I've had where I am traveling a lot. And sometimes in my kids' lives, that was absolutely fine. And you would think, oh, that's when they're this age because they don't need you, or it's this age because they've got their own social life, and actually it didn't work like that at all. I thought when my kids were teenagers, they would need me less. And actually, I found just the other year when my eldest was 17, it's when she has needed me more than any other time in her life where it needed to be me. And so yeah, with each of the stages, I made different decisions. I wouldn't make all the same decisions the same way. Um, but you can have it all, but you've got to balance it and make decisions and know that having it all doesn't always mean all at the same time. You can balance that out over the years.
And have you seen any curveballs come in from parents or from family or from friends that have kind of jeopardized that balance along the way?
I think that you are living a pretty nice cotton ball type life if you don't get any curveballs. I've had a lot of curveballs. I've had nothing that thankfully, knock on wood, nothing that we couldn't overcome and work our way through. But my parents are in their 80s. We've certainly had that sort of sandwich type experience where you're taking care of parents in just sort of an emotional way or a financial way. And you've got kids that you're also taking care of an emotional way and a financial way. And I've had my daughter actually was sick a few months back, and we didn't know what was wrong. And I needed to make serious decisions at that point. I couldn't travel. I couldn't actually do the role that I was required to do, and give her 100%. And I know that there's only 100%. It's sort of one of my pet peeves when people go, I'm going to give 120%. I was like, not possible. But you can give 100% to something. And I couldn't give my 100% to work because my daughter needed more. So I had to take a percentage from work. And thankfully, my company was able to support me through that. And I think that I'm lucky, but I also think that part of the hard work, the years, the relationships that I've built also made it easier for my company to support me, where they're like, okay, we know this is what she needs right now. So we're going to give her a support network. We're going to make sure that, she can walk away from the role so she can do what she needs to do right now. And that was a major curveball. Because we didn't see it coming and we didn't know what was going on for quite a while. So it's one of those, how long's a piece of string? How long are you going to be out? I have no idea. And thankfully, again, knock on wood, we're doing very well. We now know exactly what was wrong, and we're still finding the new normal. But
Yeah.
so the curveball has straightened out.
Great. And I'm really glad to hear that for her and for you as well. But tell me about how it was stepping out of the workplace at that time. Obviously, you're in a senior role. You've got a lot of eyes on you. Um, you've got quite a high profile in the industry as well. And you took the decision to step back from work. How did you think about that from a career perspective or from a workplace perspective as well?
Chris, it it was awful. So first of
Yeah.
all, and here's the thing, we all say this thing where you go, family first, and everyone goes, yes, yes, of course, family first, family
Yeah.
first. It's different saying it than doing it. And I felt like a failure. To that point before of you can have everything, which was sort of in a positive light, you can have everything from a negative light. Like it was I can't have everything. I can't balance these things and go, I'll have that in the future, because actually in the midst of all of it, and part of this wonderful midlife is the fact that, I'm going through perimenopause at the same time as I'm trying to juggle work and family and all of these things, was that I couldn't do it all, and I couldn't manage in my head what needed to be done, particularly with so much unknown. And I felt like a failure. I felt like anyone else could have
Yeah.
managed this and I couldn't. Um and no matter, even looking back now, I'm well past a year since then, and I still look back and I go, "God, I still have a little bit of that going on." I'm going, I didn't manage that. I didn't figure out how to juggle work and family when the curveball came. Um, but then there is something that I look back on and I go, I'm sitting here today talking to you, Chris, feeling brilliant. Yes, I had to step back from a role. It was something that I had worked towards, that I really wanted to be successful in. I hadn't even been in place for, I mean, it had been a quarter. And I look back now and I go, I love the role I have today. I'm bringing value to the same business that I was in then, and it's worked out and it's fine. And I was actually speaking to an external colleague, so a partner of ours, and I was talking to him through the experience that I had had during this time. And he said, I had no idea. I had no idea you were going through that. I had no idea that you had stepped out of that role. I sort of had noticed it on LinkedIn, but I'd never really thought through what was going on. And it was a revelation to me where I was like, I kind of was so self-conscious about what was going on. I assumed everyone was looking at me and everyone was going, oh, what's happened to Philippa? And God, she failed at that role. And so on. And then you realize some people just didn't even notice. And that's a good thing, that you can't be, focus on what's important. Don't worry about what everyone else is thinking, because chances are they're not even thinking about it. But I did. At the time, I felt like a failure. I I did, and I recognize that, and I know that I am not a failure. I know exactly what I would say to someone else, but it's sometimes easier to say something to someone else than to feel it yourself.
Yeah. Tell me what you would say to somebody else. If somebody else is sitting there going,
Not a failure.
"You're not."
The first thing you would say to someone else is, of course you're not a failure. Of course you put your family first. Of course you do exactly what you're doing. And that's exactly what I would say to someone, and it's exactly what people said to me. But while you're going through it, you just have to do it in your own time, and and absolutely talk to people. Let people know what's going on, um, because people actually will just step out and help you. Doing it on your own is the worst thing that I think you can do. By sharing with my manager what I was going through, not only with my daughter, but also emotionally and in terms of chemically within myself,
Yeah.
he was able to really see the spectrum of what I was dealing with, and be able to, for the first few weeks, just play cover for me, and make sure that I was given that time to go to the doctors and explore what was wrong with my daughter. And then as it rolled on further, to be able to go, okay, let's brainstorm about what our options are here, and never felt alone in the process.
What a gift.
Yeah. And that's where I was saying before, I'm incredibly lucky. Um, we don't all have managers who step up.
Yeah.
Um, but it wasn't only luck, because I had invested in years, and this manager actually had known me for years. He had been a peer prior to that, and in that investment of working together and being someone who's always worked hard, was incredibly diligent, he knew my capability, and that I wasn't just going, can't be bothered. Let's just take, 6 weeks off because I feel like it. He knew that I needed this time.
Having had the pleasure of working with you, I know there's a particular way that you approach these professional relationships. What's some of the things that you could share about how you've approached your professional relationships, and how they've then uh, fueled you in the work that you've done?
Um, so something that changed for me, um, I don't know how many years ago, but it certainly in the last, 17 years. So I didn't join my current company as the person I am today. First of all, look at my hair. I mean, I always had it tied back or something really professional. I would always look at these beautifully coiffed women and go, why can't I look like that? And I would spend hours straightening my hair and trying to fit into a mold. And it's interesting. The first proper job I had out of university, I worked for a management consulting company. And one of our biggest clients was a much larger management consulting company. And you wore a black or blue suit. You absolutely never wore anything other than that. Your hair was absolutely in a coif. And at some point over the last 10 years, I would say, I went, you know what, being authentic isn't just about letting your hair look crazy, but it's about making sure who you are comes through in what you're doing. And I remember I had to present myself once, and you had to have a strap line of how you presented yourself. And so I decided that my strap line was going to be Ronseal, which anyone who knows what Ronseal is, Chris, do you know what the strap line of Ronseal is?
It does what it says on the tin.
Yeah. And that was what I wanted. I wanted people, when they worked with Philippa Clifford-Davies, you knew she did what she said she was going to do. That you never had a question about it. And if I wasn't able to deliver what I said I was going to deliver in the time scale, within budget, within, all the confines of a project, I would tell you myself. I was always realistic. I was always honest. And I wanted that to be my reputation. And I really sort of built off of that and continued until I was like, you know what? Everyone now knows I do what it says on the tin. Now, what do I want the tin to be about, and what's important to me? Now I keep delivering for other people. What do I want to deliver for myself? And I wanted to make sure that was ever going to be on that tin, or some people talk about what you want on your gravestone or whatever it is, but I wanted it to be something that I would be really proud of. Um, and I do care about people liking me. I am a people pleaser, but in a way that I want everyone to feel that they have been listened to and properly heard and respected during it. And going back to and enjoyed it. I want them to smile. I want them to think about during their time of working with me, they may not even remember the project, but that they enjoyed the experience of working together. And I have brought that along with me, whether it is internally or externally working with partners. I've tried to bring that in everything that I do. And so I think that's kind of what my tin now looks like. It's an authentic smile, let's say.
Oh, I can hear your mum and dad speaking now, Philippa. Oh, that's excellent. Um, and thinking about the firm you've worked in, I mean, you've had a long career in any one organisation. Many people don't stay anywhere for that length of time nowadays, and it's led much of the world through multiple technology waves. How had you, with all those technology waves that have come and gone, how's your relationship to technology changed over that time, and how have you surfed those waves, or how have you encouraged your team and yourself to think about those technology waves?
Yeah. So it's interesting. I always considered myself to try to be a early adopter of technology. And because so much of my career has been based on being programmatic. So uh, I have been with Oracle for 17 years, and I was with the Oracle user group for 7 years before that. It's been a long old stint, and technology has changed a lot, and the solutions provided have changed a lot.
Yeah.
And I always tried to be an early adopter, and I always really worked towards where my focus was because I'm so programmatic. Technology always allowed to drive that and streamline that and make us much more efficient. And I loved jumping on things early, whether it be, collaboration type tools like a Slack, or, I mean, whether it's jumping into using those earlier than the rest of the company. Um, but what's happened over the years is, and I don't know why this is, Chris, but although I'm still really eager to be an early adopter, I do find that I've now become more of a dinosaur, where I don't necessarily catch on to things as quickly anymore. And I think it's because you don't need so much the early adoption. It's so much already baked in. It's that feedback that's required is being fed within itself. And then you truly just become the user, the consumer of that technology, rather than the tester and I always loved being in the testing. I'm very much a geek in that way. So now I must admit, it's other people on my team who come to me and go, have you seen this latest thing? And I'm still, I love getting into what's new, but yeah, things are more coming towards me than me searching them out anymore. And yeah, I slightly, I feel like now I'm old school, where I never felt that before.
Yeah. So I wonder whether that change in your relationship with new waves of technology is also reflective of something wider that happens to us in midlife, when we strive less to make things happen and are more confident that the right things will come to us. And does that resonate when you think about your relationship to technology, or do you think it is just something inherent within the technology rather than inherent within you?
Genuinely not sure. I think that some of it is the change in technology. Um, I don't, although I understand the technology itself in terms of what it is there to achieve, how it can support us as individuals and businesses, um, I don't feel as connected to it. And maybe that is part of my midlife, that I just am accepting of it.
Yeah.
But then saying that aloud makes me feel uncomfortable, because it almost puts me in a new bracket. Like, I don't, for anyone who works in technology, this may ring true to them. My neighbors think I work in computers because that's how they have translated technology in their head. And so when they can't turn their computer on because they haven't changed the socket on the wall or whatever, they come to me thinking that I know about it. And what worries me about your question is that I'm getting closer to that generation, which I know is not what you mean. But I think there is an element of, I am accepting of what technology is capable of doing, and I don't need to control or necessarily adapt. And yeah, I don't know. I genuinely, Chris, I couldn't answer that question because I'm not comfortable with either side of it. And I think that that's what I need to get comfortable with,
Yeah.
is that it's continuous change. That I cannot stop this evolution,
Yep.
nor would I want to, but I do have to stay comfortable with it. And I think as soon as you stop being comfortable and you try to push against it, that's where you stop evolving too, when it comes to technology anyway.
Yeah. Tell me, you are a senior female leader within this large technology firm. How do you create a healthy role model for those younger than you who are watching you, how you work and who you are? What are some of the things you think about in terms of becoming a role model in the firm?
I think I'd go back to being authentic. Um, I I don't want any person who is moving up their career thinking or feeling that it's not obtainable because I have projected this image of perfection. And so as soon as they feel that they haven't achieved perfection, they're not going to be able to achieve it. Now, I the people who I admire most are the people who I feel that I really know, that I have seen their flaws. I have seen their what they consider their failures, right?
Yeah.
Where from an outsider I was going, that's not a failure. But because they shared that with me and how they felt about it, I feel more normal. And having that feeling of that I'm in a group of people, and it's because it's not just women, but in a group of people who are authentic, that they do share all aspects of their lives, allows the rest of us to be able to go, oh, I can do that. I can see myself in that person.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that that's incredibly important. They talk about, for all young people, of ensuring that, people have role models that they can see themselves in. And that is not always about color or culture or sex or any of those things. It's actually just that human that they recognize themselves in, because no matter what you look like or where you've come from, if
Mm.
you don't let that inside out, those people can't see themselves in you. And I think that that is incredibly important. And that's something that I hope I do give to other people. If
Yeah.
I'm going to be really reflective on it, I think I probably do it too much. But I am who I am.
You are who you are, and they love you for it. But I'm curious now because obviously you have gone through and you are going through your own midlife transition. How would you like to adapt corporate culture to better support people going through the sort of transitions and sort of events that you've been through over the recent years?
That's a hard one because, as I explained, I was incredibly well taken care of.
Mm.
And I think that there is amazing support out there. Um, but I work for a huge company that has invested, right?
Yeah.
And so we have a just host of resources available to you that actually get pushed to you regularly, that you can also go out and look for. And what I have found, I started something some years ago called WOW, which was Wonderful Oracle Women. And it was just for women who weren't just from inside the walls, but mostly for women outside the walls. Because it's something that I recognized quite early on, is that so many of our partners are small companies. A lot of them have under, 200 employees, and being in technology, the majority of those people are men.
Mm.
And in those small companies, they didn't have that repository of resources that were constantly being pushed. So I created this sort of ecosystem of women that would come together just over Zoom, and we would chat. We would chat about, mental health and what did they have in place at work to support those around them, and what are the kinds of signs that we would be looking for. We talked about mentoring, that, within very small organizations, the pool of people to be able to mentor with can be incredibly small. So could we use each other's businesses to be able to grow that wider? Menopause, children, aging parents, we had a whole raft of topics that we talk about. And sometimes we come together and we have no topic at all, and it's just interesting what comes up. But again, I think that companies, if you aren't large enough to do it yourself, find like-minded others to support and widen out that ecosystem. And if companies aren't doing it, the individuals themselves, there is so much out there, like in your local community, that has nothing to do with work, which might feel like a safer space even, to access. And I think that if a company can't put it in themselves, they should be aware of what else is out there and point people, just, road signs. Find this here, find that there. Because I recognize it's hard for small companies. My
Yeah.
husband owns a small company, and I know what he goes through being, the founder, the owner, the janitor, the the accountant, doing all of that, it means that some of the HR isn't as thorough. So you do have to use what else is out there for you. And I don't think there's an excuse not to do that.
I'm going to use that as a good opportunity for a quick advert for our midlife murmuration. And that was very much the inspiration of starting this to begin with, is how we better support each other through midlife, and how we get together to tell those stories and to share those experiences and those wisdoms and resources. So if you're listening to this and feeling like I haven't got the support, do join the murmuration, and we'd love to see you there. It's not all been plain sailing though, has it? Your 17 years with this particular organisation, and you've had a couple of little bumps along the road. Would you like to tell us about those?
I have, and I think there's so many sayings that come along, which is, change is the only constant. So be prepared for that, I think. And all change brings opportunity. And, over the years, the company has changed a lot, and we've had different leadership, different direction. And during that time, we change our organizations, and that sometimes means that roles are no longer available. And I have been caught up in RIFs twice
What is a riff?
with a reduction in force. So it's when roles are no longer required within the company due to change of direction or reorganization. And I have been on the management side of RIFs, and I've been on the employee side of RIFs, and it's never easy. Um, and I think the first time that I was made aware that my role was no longer going to be available, and I needed to make some decisions, that feeling of failure again, and this is the hard part about it, is I knew it was a numbers game. It was not personal. It wasn't, Philippa's doing a terrible job. It's, we decided to make this change, and there's only so many roles, and mine no longer existed. But at the time, I I remember bouts of uncontrollable crying, of absolutely feeling like this is about me, that this is personal. Um, and I got offered a lifeline, which I took with both hands, and absolutely was so thankful for it. But it also meant that I didn't take a moment to reflect and go, well, what do I want my next steps to be? I kind of went, there's the lifeline, I'm going to take it, and didn't think any further. The next time we had a change, I was really able to think much more clearly about what do I want, and really think about, where do I want to be? What do I want to be doing? What else is on the market? What is my value? What are my priorities? And I made the decision to stay. I made the decision to use a lifeline that was available to me. But it was definitely much more a decision making that I took. Um, I I knew myself so much better, and I was making a very conscious decision. And I am not naive enough to think, oh, well, this will never happen again. You never know. You never know. Change is constant. One thing that I would say for anyone who's been here as long as I am, we are resilient. You absolutely know how to lean in and keep going, and make sure that your value is not only known by yourself, but also by your stakeholders. Um, but So although it's never easy, RIFs, it's a terrible thing to be going through, whether you are the recipient or the manager who needs to put it in place. Um, it kind of does get a little bit easier in terms of knowing how you're going to respond to it, because you do have some hindsight. Now, I don't hope for anyone that they go through it more than once, but if anyone is going through it, I would tell them to take a second and think, what is it that you really want? And of the options that are presented in front of you, um, what how do you wish to proceed? And I think some people feel like, well, there's never an option. I've lost my role. There's nothing I can do. The decision is made. And that may absolutely be true. But you still always have a decision about how you're going to react to it, because burning bridges is, in my experience, never a good idea. It's a very small world if you want to stay within the same industry. And, coming out, being professional and having, you know, left with your head held high is important. And actually, it serves you very well going forward. So there are still decisions to make when things like this happen, whether you have a lifeline or not. If you have a lifeline, think clearly about whether you want to take it or not. And if you don't have a lifeline, how do you wish to exit? And what network do you have to be able to leverage during that time? Because again, going back to before, we were talking about curveballs. That's a major curveball. And again, it's the people who I spoke to during the time that really helped me. And that happens during times of change in organizations too. Talk to people. What do you want to achieve? What are you looking to do? What value do you still bring? Let people know inside the organization, outside of the organization, because there might be a lifeline that you're not aware of that could actually be created during that time too.
Yeah. I love that you've, again, drawn upon those relationships to help you with that reflection. And I also really appreciated the call out for mindset at the beginning. The riff, the redundancy is something that you can't control, but the mindset of how you face into it is absolutely something that you can control. And I know this is true in my life, this statistic, but by the time of your early 50s, on average now, people have been made redundant 3 times. And there's certainly been
Right.
certainly
I've
true
got
for me.
another time.
You've got, on average, some might have been more unfortunate and had it 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times to make up for you. But it's a reality of the world we're working in now. And I think the stigma has gone as well. And employers are looking at this, redundancy happens for a whole host of reasons. Very, very, very few of them have actually got anything to do with the individual who's been made redundant. And I think to the mindset that we can control around how I'm going to interpret these events and how I'm going to communicate them and how I'm going to look forward is something that, if you're struggling with it, do ask for help, because there's a lot of people out there who would love to get around and help you think through, well, how do I take a positive mindset into this and make the most of this situation that hasn't been something I've courted, but something that I'm now finding myself in.
And I think, so here's the thing. People genuinely do want to help, as
Yeah.
long as you are asking from a position of, I'm going to take your help. I think sometimes the mindset is, I just want to talk, and people are willing to listen, but I'll be honest, only for so long. At some point, they're looking for you to take action with what is going on. So what's really important is that when you're asking for help, you're really clear on what that ask is. If it is, I'm asking for help, I just want you to listen to me. I just want you to let me get it all out. That's fine. That's an acceptable ask. If it is, I need help. I need a new role. I need some coaching or guidance as I'm going through this, but having real clarity of the ask and then taking action off of what has been given to you. Because what you'll find is those people are really willing to help you.
Yeah.
When, however, the ask is not clear and it's just a repetitive sort of stream of, I just want you to listen to me again. I'm going to say all of it again. That's when the help then starts reducing over time. And so it's making sure that you're clear on what you're asking people for help with, and not taking advantage of that, because it's a gift that these people are giving you.
Mhm.
And when you get a gift, you need to then appreciate that gift and use it. Um, and what I found is, by asking for help, I was given so many gifts. And what I'd like to think is that the people felt that I used those gifts well and appreciated them. And the wonderful things when you're given those gifts is that you then become someone who wants to bestow that gift to someone else. And and so I think going circle to where I started is, please do not hesitate for asking for help, because probably the people you're asking for help from have at some point in their career asked for help themselves, and they know what a gift it was that they were given, and they're going to want to give that gift to someone else. So use it.
Don't go alone. You don't need to go alone.
You know.
Um, let's widen it a little bit from the workplace. Tell me about how your view of community has evolved as you've journeyed through life.
So I think when you're younger, your community is sort of where you grew up, the people who,
Mhm.
the village that raised you. And the village that raised me was a very small town in the northwest corner of Connecticut, and it was very small. Everyone knew each other. It's kind of like one of those weird New England, murder mysteries where the kids on the bike and everyone waves. Everyone knew each other. It was an incredibly safe environment. Um, I then went from there to an all-girls boarding school, which also was a very safe environment, but a very different and felt unsafe in terms of, it took me out of my absolute comfort zone, and in the best possible ways. I mean, it stretched you intellectually, it stretched you emotionally, living away from home, being independent, navigating, almost political waters in terms of the people that you were living with. We had incredible wealth and poverty living under the same roof, and getting the same education, which was there to drive us to be leaders and think for ourselves as young women. um, I then did a stint in upstate New York, which sounds like a prison. It felt like that at times, at university, where I studied art history. And that community, I felt less of a community at university, than I had in high school or where I grew up. I think it just didn't fit for me. And part of that was really because I had spent my junior year in Italy studying art history, which is what I got my degree in, which has been incredibly useful in technology. Um, and but that year in Italy made me go, do you know where I felt like I had a community was in Europe. I felt at home. I felt that I was surrounded by a life that I was looking for, and which is really what ended up driving me to the UK.
Can you say what it
Um,
was about what you found in Italy that sort of chimed with you in that way?
I think there's something incredibly romantic, clearly, about living in Italy. Everything was new. Everything was a new experience. It was exhilarating, and I loved that. I mean, upstate New York was not that way. I mean, it was, if it wasn't snowing, it was very cold. We had really lovely days in sort of September into October, and then it was pretty much as cold and snowy until you hit March, April, and then we'd leave school again. So I think going to Italy for that year, it just opened me up to, what do I want in my life? What I want, excitement. I want to travel. I want to constantly feel like I have something new. Um, but and I absolutely loved that. But going back to the community, is also in Italy, the family I lived with, the grandmother, the mother, the son, and then the student, all living together. And the sitting down for every meal. And I grew up sitting down for every meal, but this was different. This was, 3 to 4 courses every night. And it was a different kind of community than I had really ever experienced before. And I loved it. I haven't replicated it in my own home. I don't think I could cook 4 courses a night, but it was such a wonderful experience. And it was that newness of that experience that I wanted to make sure that I was going to continue to get. And but being so far from home, I think living in Italy also taught me that you have to make your own community and meeting people and building that. So when I moved to the UK, I mean, I was only 21 and I didn't have family here to make my community, and I hadn't gone to school with anyone or went to church. So I had to build my community, and I did, and I did it through friendships. And that is still today, where my community is. Even within work. I think about my really close work community, those authentic people.
Yeah.
They are the people who bind me together and keep me real and keep me honest.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's part of that community today.
Philippa, thank you. It's been really lovely conversation. I've got one final question for you. What wisdom would you have liked to have had 10 years ago to help you navigate this chapter well?
Ooh, 10 years ago. Do you know, I was given some advice more like 30 years ago. It was probably nearly exactly a little over 30 years ago. I was given some advice that I keep having to remind myself to take. So back in high school, I went to this lovely all girls boarding school, and I was so incredibly lucky that when we graduated, our graduation speaker was Oprah Winfrey. And she was talking to all of us about, how we look forward and how we trust ourselves. And she was painting this picture to all of us, going, when you've got your white dress on and you're walking down the aisle with your dad on your arm, and you look down the aisle and you see your groom, and if you get a pit in your stomach and you feel like it's not right, you run, girl. I mean, she's so animated. And that piece of advice, I think about it all the time, about that gut feeling. No matter how much money you've spent, no matter how far down the path you think you've already gotten, when you feel like you cannot back out of something, it is never too late. Go with your gut. I know I've talked about know your value a few times. Know your value. It's never too late. And I sometimes forget that advice, but I'm glad it was given to me, even though it was over 30 years ago, because it's advice that when I remind myself of it, I remember to trust my gut. And I hope that I've passed that advice on today.
Philippa Clifford-Davies, thank you so much for your midlife murmurings. It's been an absolute joy.
It's been my pleasure. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks.